Thanks, guys, for that first carrier update this morning. Right now, it's time to welcome our air cargo editor, Eric Kulisch, to the show today, talking all about what's going on with Amazon Air and their bid to continue to expand their air footprint. Eric, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Kaylee. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, as always. So let's just dig right into it. Amazon, of course, one of the biggest leaders really in the e-commerce retail world. And we've talked about them kind of getting into the air cargo market a little bit, but now they're trying to do things even bigger.
Yeah, I mean, they're the big retail giant, but they're also, just a massive logistics operator in their own right. And, we've talked on this show about Amazon Air, their private airline several times, and nothing shocking, but it's just like a juggernaut. It just every 6 months, every year, it just keeps growing inexorably. And so these folks, these researchers at DePaul University in Chicago are doing like a semi-annual report tracking their growth, and they just came out with a report. And it's very interesting. I think on an annual basis over the last 12 months, the fleet or their flight activity, the number of flights has grown about 30%. They estimate that'll continue this year and in the coming years at about a 20 to 24% clip. And that's just a function of, adding more aircraft, increasing their tempo, adding more airport destinations, kind of feeder routes. And so it's just growing overall. What's kind of interesting in this case is that a lot of the growth is happening in their European network, which is pretty small still, but it's growing. It jumped from about 8 to 18 flights a day. And their operator over there is a company called ASL Airlines. It's based in Ireland, and they fly these Boeing 737-800 jets, and they picked up a bunch of them last year, converted freighters from Boeing, so they have more capacity to fly. And what's really interesting, they noticed in Europe, but it's also happening in the U.S., is that the flight activity, they got what Amazon doesn't fly, as we all know, doesn't fly its own airplanes. It's not really an airline operator. It just lays the foundation, has all the routes, puts the stuff on the plane. But they hire contractors to fly these planes, and one of them's ASL. And so, but what they found is that there's a lot of what they call ghost flights that are, flights that aren't with Amazon registered aircraft, but that these partners who also have aircraft of their own fly supplemental flights with these kind of planes that are registered in under their own names, but they're flying them on basically the same similar routes and times that the Amazon flights. So they've been able to put it all together and go, Amazon's actually flying more than this kind of official number. So that's kind of interesting. And so all this activity or all this flight capability is, kind of putting Amazon in position to, if they want to operate more of a hub and spoke network like FedEx and UPS, and eventually provide more third-party delivery, not just for in-house deliveries, but for customers if they would want to do that.
So, Eric, good morning. By the way, nice to see you again this week.
Hey, Mike.
Yes. So, explain to me do you understand the strategy between they have these contracted flights and these contract providers, which makes perfect sense to me because it provides you that flexibility. Why the additional step into these ghost flight? Is that by design, or is it just overflow as they try and grow other capacity, or is it by design for added flexibility?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of things. I mean, I think it's probably they've got X amount of capacity or flights in their schedule, and sometimes they need more. They realize they need some extra airlift, and so these providers are able to provide it with their own aircraft that they use for multiple customers. The Amazon dedicated planes that they fly for Amazon, they have the Amazon livery, the brand name on them, and they're dedicated to Amazon. And then they've got their other rest of their fleet that they fly for everybody else. And I guess if Amazon needs some extra, they pull those in. So it's kind of interesting. One other interesting potential trend is that there's been some reports that Amazon's interested in getting some big freighters. Most of their freighters are these mid-size Boeing 767s, and these smaller 737s. But there's been some reporting that they were interested in getting some transcontinental, 777s or some Airbus planes and to fly across the oceans with their imported goods, because right now their network's mostly to supplement or fill feed their feed their warehouses or make sure they're move around inventory within their warehouse network. This would be able to bring stuff in from manufacturing sites around the world, and they think that's likely with all the supply chain disruption that Amazon would be interested in doing that gradually.
Absolutely. I feel like Amazon would be the type of company to go and say, you know what, we're done relying on these other pieces of our network to get our supplies, and we're just going to take it to the source. They've got the width and the money and the scale, obviously, to make that happen. Sticking on that thread, Air Transport Services Group is now also looking at buying 4 more conversions for the 767 freighter. Can you talk a little bit about how this plays into Amazon's strategy as well?
Sure. So one of those contractors is a company called Air Transport Services Group in Wilmington, Ohio. And, they're a really interesting, air services conglomerate. They've got all kinds of divisions, but 2 of them they've got a leasing company, and then they have 2 airlines, ABX Air and Air Transport International. And those companies are contractors that fly for Amazon, and they just placed another order. They just ordered 4 more 767s. They're the largest operator of Boeing 767 freighters in the world. They have about 100 of them. And in November, they ordered 4. They buy these planes on the secondary market, and then they send them to Boeing. Right now, they're sending them to Boeing, or some of them to Boeing, to convert, to cut holes in the wider cargo door. And so they're getting another 4. They have an option for 4 more. They used to go to Israel Aircraft Industries for these conversions, but they're busy, so they're kind of diversifying to get more production capability. And then it's very interesting. They're expanding overall. They just ordered 9 Airbus A330s. They're going into the Airbus fleet type for the first time. Last summer, they ordered 20 of those slots. So between now and 2027, they've got about 80 production slots at these engineering or conversion shops that they're going to be adding these planes to their leasing fleet and to their operating fleet.
Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. Hey, let's jump to something kind of interesting here. I don't know if you realize this, Eric, but Formula One racing starts this weekend in Bahrain, right? And the logistics of that's got to be crazy, right? Can you know anything about that?
I just wrote a big story. You can go to freightwaves.com and americanshipper.com.
I had a feeling.
I'm just getting into Formula One the last couple of years. I'm watching the Netflix series Drive to Survive. So now I'm watching some of the live races, and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at the end of the season last year. The whole season was neck and neck between the Red Bull race car and Mercedes was the top dog for years, and they got upset in the last race in a controversial finish. So now the new season's starting, and I decided to do a story on their logistics operation. How do they move this giant operation from circuit to circuit, 22, 23 race tracks around the world, 5 continents, within 8 or 9 months. It's a massive operation. DHL Global Forwarding and DHL, their motorsports division, is pretty much in charge of most of it. Some of the teams have some supplemental logistics providers, but it's incredible how they have to use mostly air transport with dedicated freighters, but also they use pre-positioned stuff with ocean shipping. And in Europe, they use a lot of truck, movement by truck. They have advanced teams that come in, drop in, parachute in about 14 days ahead of time, start doing the setup. Then there's a team that operates while they're there. Then while the race is finishing up, there's a breakdown team that pulls out stuff, and so and meanwhile stuff's rotating in the background, pre-positioning. So it's fascinating stuff. And the point that I make in the story is this is such a demanding sport. These these race cars are going 223 miles an hour at top speed, precision engineering, aerodynamics, technology. And so you need a precision engineered logistics operation at the same scale to support that, because there's no room for failure.
Absolutely. It's you think being a truck driver is hard. Try being a Formula One driver, right?
I mean, at least but they only got to race for an hour and a half or so. The truck drivers out there for 11 hours a day. So
yeah, you can catch a whole race during detention time if you're a driver, right?
Exactly.
All right, Eric, thank you for joining us this morning. Always great to have you. Go check out that story up on freightwaves.com, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, good seeing you guys.
Thanks, Eric.
All right.